the components of Porter's 5+1, the threat of new entrants, which is when new companies come into a market and try to take a piece of the market share. And the other components would be the bargaining power of buyers, which means how much a buyer can haggle for supplies for his company. Threat of substitutes, which is if you're a car manufacturer and you're Ford, the substitute would be Honda or anything else that would work instead of what you want. The fourth component of the Porter's +5 is the bargaining power of suppliers, which is when a industry isn't important or a company can't backwards integrate, the supplier has more power over the price. And the power of complements, which is if you're buying a toothbrush, you're going to need toothpaste as well, so that would be a complement. It's not in the same industry per se, but it's something that goes along with it. And all of this is based around rivalry.
Porter's 5+1 is threat of new entrants, which we'll be explaining today. With the threat of new entrants, there are 7 basic barriers to entry. The first one being economies of scale. Economies of scale, which are cost advantages from mass production. Costs gained by increased level of supply. So like when a company mass produces something, so with like Bush versus Miller, they don't specialize or personalize their beer. They just do a generalized beer and send it out. Economies of scale is also a way to become more efficient, which allows companies to lower costs and raise their productions. The larger the business, the more costs saved.
Differentiation is when companies strive to differ their products from another company's product or service, identifying unique qualities of a specific product. Like a toilet paper company putting patterns on the toilet paper to make it stand out from other ones, or having an extra roll in the package at the same price. Brand loyalty is with more technology things like Apple and people that like iPhones. If you like an iPhone, you're not going to switch over to something else because you're loyal to it. It's, you know, everything that goes around iPhones, and it's easier to stay that way.
So capital requirements is essentially the upfront cost. So all the expenses for the marketing and starting a business is essentially what the capital requirement is, which makes the barrier to enter strong and really high because not a lot of people have that money, and if they do, they're scared to invest that. If there's a chance they might just lose it all. A great example of this would be the automotive industry. So you need a factory to make all the cars, you need an idea for all the cars, you need the money for it, and you need the knowledgeable workers so they can make it all happen and distribute the car. Marketing's huge with this. If you don't have a good marketing program as a new industry, you're never going to last.
For switching costs is an effective entry barrier since it forces new entrants to provide customers with incentives to choose their product. For example, AT&T, they offer switching to come to their product. If you come to switch to their product, you earn a tablet or get a $100 purchase for your next phone. One is access to distribution. Through long-standing relationships to persuade distribution channels must offer price discounts, promotions, and cooperative advertising. An example is Walmart distributes products that would like to sell their products through them, Travelocity is distributors of hotels at cheap prices.
Absolute cost advantages obtains cheaper innovations, inputs, or other such means of lowering average costs. An absolute cost advantages is pretty much when the company has been in the industry long enough and the industry is in its maturity stage for the most part to gain the upper hand through things like knowledgeable workers, trade secrets, or just having the equipment or lower prices, things that the newcomers couldn't possibly match. So an example of this would be Southwest versus American Airlines in the airline industry. They're big name businesses who've been in the industry long enough. They're gonna have the trade secrets and things within their companies that newcomers couldn't possibly expect to match.
So for government policy, we're going to talk about the beer industry. They are a high barrier to entry with a low competition rate. The reason the barrier to entry is so high within the beer industry because of government policy is because the government can enforce laws and just make laws that prevent you from distributing a certain amount of beer and what you can and can't put out there. For example, Pabst Blue Ribbon has a 99 pack that they can only sell in Canada because of the laws in the United States that prevent it. So government policy is holding back from how much they can produce and sell here in the United States. Another thing that limits that is the access to raw materials and product testing regulations. All right, so a brief example for threat of new entrants is going to be the airline industry. It's a low threat for a new entrant to join. There is no economies of scale because it is nearly impossible to mass produce airlines. Brand loyalty is extremely low because most people are going to choose the cheapest flight to go from point A to point B. The low switching cost is because almost all prices in flights are going to be the same. They might be off by a few $10, $20, but essentially the prices will always be the same. And there's very high government regulations. So the government can determine when an airplane can leave, where it can go, and there's also a lot of safety regulations regarding that because when you put thousands of people on airplanes a day, you always want to make sure they're safe, so they put a lot of regulations to assure their safety. And then there's a high access to distribution channels. If you went on Google and you just searched a flight from New York to Florida, there's going to be hundreds of options that pop up.
So that is our crash course video on the threat of new entrants. In summary, economies of scale is when companies can mass produce. This is a threat. If economies of scale is possible, this is a threat to newcomers into the industry. Product differentiation and brand loyalty is a threat if it exists, because if a company like Nike has brand loyalty, then these newcomers don't stand a chance with the market share. Capital requirements. When capital requirements are high, that equals a threat. The airline industry has a lot of upfront costs with having to buy new planes. They have to buy a flyer to come out of, and they have to distribute their marketing to get their name out. Customer switching costs. This is a threat when it is low because customers can choose where they want to buy their products from. So like switching from AT&T to Verizon is relatively cheap. Switching from airline to airline is typically pretty cheap. That's why customers do it. So that would be a threat then. Access to distribution channels is a threat when it is low. When there's no relationship built with newcomers coming in, there is no access to distribute their products. That is a threat. Absolute cost advantages are advantages that newcomers couldn't possibly think of having. So when this is high, this is a threat. When companies have been in the industry for a long time, this is a threat because they're more typical to have this absolute cost advantages with knowledgeable workers and trade secrets that, like I said earlier, these newcomers couldn't possibly think fathom. Government policies, when they're high, that's a threat because the government is restricting what you can produce and how you can produce it, or how you can even sell and distribute it. An example of that would be the beer industry, with their regulations on when people can buy it, like what time of day and how old you have to be